In the annals of American history, the abolitionist movement stands as one of the most fervent and morally charged campaigns, a struggle to end the abhorrent institution of slavery. Within this broader movement, certain figures and groups took extraordinary risks, operating in the shadows to support radical action against slavery. Among them was a clandestine group of 6 wealthy abolitionists known as the Secret Six, whose covert financial and logistical support fueled John Brown's infamous raid on Harpers Ferry in 1859. These individuals, driven by their deep convictions and moral outrage against slavery, risked their lives, reputations, and fortunes to fund a daring act of insurrection that they hoped would ignite a broader anti-slavery revolution. Operating under complete secrecy to evade prosecution and societal backlash, the Secret Six left an indelible mark on the fight for freedom, illustrating the complex and often dangerous intersection of idealism, wealth, and rebellion. By the mid-19th century, the United States was a nation teetering on the brink of division. The institution of slavery had become a moral and political powder keg, fueling heated debates, violent confrontations, and growing sectional tensions. Abolitionist fervor was spreading across the North, yet it was met with fierce resistance from pro-slavery advocates in the South. Amid this volatile atmosphere, John Brown, a radical abolitionist, emerged as a polarizing figure. Brown believed slavery could only be abolished through armed insurrection, and he was willing to die for the cause. Brown's radicalism alienated many moderate abolitionists, but his uncompromising stance also attracted a small circle of wealthy individuals who shared his disdain for gradualism and legal reform as means to end slavery. These individuals became known as the Secret Six: Thomas Wentworth Higginson, Theodore Parker, Samuel Gridley Howe, Franklin Benjamin Sanborn, George Luther Stearns, and Gerrit Smith. They were intellectuals, ministers, philanthropists, and reformers who believed that the abolition of slavery was a divine imperative, even if it required violence. The Secret Six were united not only by their shared commitment to abolition, but also by their profound belief in the moral righteousness of John Brown's vision. Brown, who had gained notoriety for his violent anti-slavery campaign in Bleeding, Kansas, sought financial backing for a bold plan: an armed raid on Harpers Ferry, Virginia, now West Virginia. His goal was to seize the federal arsenal, distribute weapons to enslaved people, and incite a massive uprising against the slaveholding South. In 1858, Brown began reaching out to potential supporters in the North. His passionate speeches and fiery rhetoric resonated deeply with the members of the Secret Six, who saw in him a vessel for their long-held desire to strike a decisive blow against slavery. They provided Brown with money, weapons, and supplies, enabling him to gather a small but committed band of followers for the Harpers Ferry raid. Despite their differing personal backgrounds, the members of the Secret Six were bound by their shared willingness to defy the law and risk their lives for the cause of abolition. Each member of the Secret Six brought a unique perspective and set of resources to the group. Thomas Wentworth Higginson, a Unitarian minister, writer, and ardent abolitionist, Higginson was deeply involved in anti-slavery activism. He saw John Brown's plan as a divine mission and worked tirelessly to rally support for it. Theodore Parker, another Unitarian minister, Parker was a fiery orator and theologian whose sermons often condemned slavery as a sin against God. Despite battling tuberculosis, he contributed his considerable influence and resources to the group. Samuel Gridley Howe, a prominent physician and reformer, Howe was deeply committed to social justice. As the director of the Perkins School for the Blind, he had experience in advocacy and fundraising, which he applied to the abolitionist cause. Franklin Benjamin Sanborn, a writer and social reformer, Sanborn served as the group's liaison with Brown. His connections within the abolitionist community made him an invaluable asset. George Luther Stearns. A wealthy industrialist, Stearns was one of the most significant financial contributors to the abolitionist movement. His fortune funded not only Brown's raid, but also other anti-slavery initiatives. Gerrit Smith. A prominent landowner and philanthropist, Smith was a lifelong advocate for abolition and racial equality. His wealth and political influence made him a critical member of the Secret Six. The Harpers Ferry raid. With the support of the Secret Six, John Brown and his small army launched their raid on Harpers Ferry on October 16, 1859. Their initial success in capturing the federal arsenal was short-lived, as local militia and federal troops quickly surrounded them. After a fierce battle, Brown was captured, and most of his men were killed or captured as well. The raid failed to spark the widespread slave rebellion that Brown and his supporters had hoped for. Instead, it intensified the sectional tensions between the North and South, hastening the onset of the Civil War. Brown was tried and executed for treason, becoming a martyr for the abolitionist cause. The aftermath of the Harpers Ferry raid sent shockwaves through the nation. The Secret Six, whose involvement in the raid was initially unknown, faced the terrifying prospect of exposure. When letters found in Brown's possession revealed their identities, they became targets of public outrage and legal prosecution. Thomas Wentworth Higginson fled temporarily to Canada, but later returned to continue his activism. Theodore Parker, already gravely ill, remained in Europe, where he died in 1860. Samuel Gridley Howe faced intense scrutiny, but managed to avoid prosecution. Franklin Benjamin Sanborn was arrested but later released due to public outcry. George Luther Stearns and Gerrit Smith also evaded punishment, though Smith temporarily suffered a mental breakdown from the stress of the situation. Despite these challenges, the members of the Secret Six remained steadfast in their belief that their actions were justified. They viewed John Brown as a hero whose sacrifice would ultimately lead to the abolition of slavery. The Secret Six occupy a complex place in American history. While their support for John Brown's raid was a radical and controversial act, it also underscored the depth of commitment among abolitionists to end slavery. Their actions highlighted the moral and ethical dilemmas faced by those who sought justice in the face of systemic oppression. John Brown's raid, funded and supported by the Secret Six, is often cited as a catalyst for the Civil War. The raid's failure and Brown's execution galvanized anti-slavery sentiment in the North while fueling paranoia and anger in the South. This polarization made compromise increasingly impossible, setting the stage for the bloody conflict that ultimately led to the abolition of slavery. The Secret Six themselves remain enigmatic figures, often overshadowed by the larger-than-life persona of John Brown. Yet their willingness to risk everything for their beliefs serves as a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made in the struggle for justice. Their story also challenges traditional narratives about the abolitionist movement, revealing the complexity and diversity of strategies employed to end slavery. The Secret Six were not mere footnotes in the abolitionist movement. They were architects of one of its most daring and controversial acts. Their financial and moral support for John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry exemplified the lengths to which individuals were willing to go to confront the horrors of slavery. While their actions remain a subject of debate, their legacy is a testament to the power of conviction and the enduring struggle for freedom and equality. In the end, the Secret Six remind us that history is not only shaped by public figures and battles, but also by those who work in the shadows, driven by ideals that challenge the status quo. Their story is a compelling chapter in the broader narrative of the fight against slavery, one that continues to inspire and provoke reflection on the nature of justice and resistance.